Yeah, thank you so much for inviting us to speak here today. And I'm observing that I'm the fifth person presenting in pink and black and white. So that's a highlight. I will be speaking today about modeling the unseen, the future of spatial experiences in extended reality. And yeah, I'm super happy to be here. So I myself am a transdisciplinary artist and design-based researcher. And what I will be speaking today about is my researching practice that does not consist too much of writing and reading, but more of doing artistic research, so of involving myself, my body, the things that I get entangled with, often cables around me. So you see here different instances of me being involved with extended reality, physical objects, and spatial environments. And the majority of the work that I'll present to you today has been developed within my PhD research that was done as part of the Communities of Tacit Knowledge, Architecture and Ways of Knowing, which was a European research endeavor, so a bit of a circus that allowed us to travel around different universities, but also cultural institutions, which was very nice. So this strong practice-based research allowed me to also exhibit my work, for example, at the New Institute in Rotterdam. So basically all the works that I'm seeing today are not only developed at academic institutions, but also tested and presented at museums or cultural institutes. So I'll speak around 40 minutes. I'll hurry up. It has been a long day in a cold room. And I will, in a nutshell, speak about how to explore virtual technologies from an embodied spatial perspective and through the lens of an artistic researcher. And I'd like to start with a little anecdote. So this is some WhatsApp screenshots and a photo of an exhibition that I had 2 years ago in Eindhoven. And in this extended reality installation, you have two people that perceive themselves through sounds in the virtual environment, and you see there's this man and woman who came there, and then there are these WhatsApp messages that there's this cutest couple that has been there touching each other all the time, and then a few weeks later I get another message of the person supervising the installation saying that there came this woman who visited. And she said that in this picture that were her friends, and she wanted to find out about the place where they fell in love with, and that he arranged the whole day for her, and they loved the experience so much, and told that friend that they found each other in my VR world, and after that also in real life, and now they're totally in love. So cute, 2 exclamation marks. So I also thought that was so cute, and I'd like to use this little anecdote for my opening question to ask why there's so much fuss about virtual worlds not being real when we can experience genuine emotions and sensations within them, such as falling in love with somebody or something. But also, of course, we all know the experience of being afraid of heights, being afraid of too dense environments, being sick. I think many of us have experienced in VR, etc., etc. So for today, I'd like to start by speaking briefly about the history of extended reality and then about my practical research on modeling the unseen. So first of all, why extended reality? We have all these VR, AR, MR terms all around us. And I think for me, what's really important to really reduce the weight on the kind of technical equipment and specificities, and using extended reality more as an umbrella term, also written with a lowercase x to focus on reality or the real experience of what we are being immersed in. And I personally don't think that it matters so much which device we're using, and especially as an artist or designer, being the person that does not design the technical device, but actually the experience in which we are immersed in. My understanding of XR is based or kind of embedded in a 90s understanding of the technology. So this idea of the reality-virtuality continuum that goes back to Paul Milgram, where instead of focusing on this kind of polarizing or opposition of having the real environment on the one side and the virtual environment on the other, I think it's very interesting to perceive it more as a spectrum or as a gradient, and basically explore like all the different modalities that evolve in between the two. So I'm interested in looking where like the real and the virtual converge and what happens then when we do so actively. So I'll begin with the history of extended reality. And two old images. So on the left, you see kind of, like the mother of all invention, Douglas Engelbart, and his team that developed the online system, where you see a computer as we still use it today. So you have like the screen, you have the mouse, the keyboard interface, a person with a crunched back and probably back pain sitting in front of it, as we all still, most of us work today. And then you have in the same year even Sutherland's Sword of Damocles, which was named after this very heavy kind of ceiling-mounted device that was sitting on the head and that allowed Sutherland to view a three-dimensional cube projected into physical space in front of him. So I think it's very important to say that, they were kind of demoed in the same year, 1968. And the interesting thing about the image on the right is that here we turn the body into the input device and consequently the whole space around us into an interface, which makes that technology an embodied spatial form of computing. And then, if we continue looking into the history, we find many black and white pictures. So they are like people dubbed the grandfather, the father, the godfathers of VR. So Morten Heilig, even Sutherland, Jaron Lanier, etc. And what's often being forgotten, that a lot of the content that was actually developed in the 90s was developed by many female pioneers and by women. So while a lot of the technical devices were developed by men, like at these institutions in that time, a lot of the more multisensory content experiences were developed by female practitioners, such as dancers, actors, artists, but also architects. And I would like to show one of these examples. So this is the making of Osmosi, which is a work by Shar Davis, a Canadian artist that has a background in painting. And this is a work from 1994, where you have a person entering the virtual space wearing a vest that measures the breathing. So upon like breathing in, of course, like our chest like expands a little bit, and upon like breathing out, it I don't know the English word, but it like kind of densifies again, like at that point. And this was translated into a navigation in the virtual space to be like lifting up or going down. So upon breathing in, you would like lift up in the virtual world, and upon breathing out, you would go down, which of course dehabituates your senses in a way that, we could not experience within the physical reality. So there's a quote by Brenda Laurel who says, "What frustrates me most is that we learn some shit that some people aren't paying attention to. Today's practitioners are probably not even aware of what was built in the early 90s, mostly by women." And this is also a notion that is kind of echoed by other female VR pioneers, such as Jackie Maury, who says that the majority of people building VR in the early days were men. But I did an in-depth survey where I tried to find artistic, meaningful, very creative virtual reality experiences. The 100 creations I found between 1985 and 2006-07, 70% of those creators were women. So of course, today we don't have the time to go through the work of all these different pioneers, but I think I would just really like to stress that this idea of embodied virtuality goes back to a lot of research and experiments that were done by these practitioners, and I would really urge you to look into their work. And I think especially for spatial practitioners, there's a lot of very inspiring experiments that have been done in like the early 90s that I think we can still learn from a lot. And in order to make this work also more accessible, as part of my PhD research, I set up an online repository. So this is xr-atlas.org. It's a platform that geographically locates loads of this work, but also chronologically allows you to go through it. And this is mainly there to find these resources. So this is also open, and you can submit your work as well. So the idea is really to diversify a bit the understanding of XR, beyond the kind of tech and entertainment industry, and find more examples from, for us, very interesting, of course, architectural, but also a lot in theater, film, literature has, of course, many more sci-fi, speculative examples, etc. So it's a repository that basically just allows you to find the sources firsthand and diversify our references within the field. And to show you to finish kind of the history part of this talk, I'd like to show you a video of Rebecca Allen. So this is even earlier, from 1983. Sorry, I have to do something. I forgot. Sorry.
The computers are coming as we've seen this week, to affect most areas of our lives. What's it to be? Man or machine? Behold, the human and the computer. This dance to technology by a living, breathing human, and the electronic dancer drawn with eerie skill by a person using a computer, in perfect step. But in real life, we are not yet perfectly attuned. Humans and machines. And so the dance continues. Rebecca Allen, the artist who animated that dancing figure, thinks computers are too important to be left solely to scientists.
You need to have people, from psychology and education and art and music able to work on these machines and help define the machine's personality.
Yeah. So I think, this is a statement 40 years old, which is still really very relevant today. So this idea to do, transdisciplinary research, but also the question of, what's the personality, what's the character of these machines, I think something that we're all interested in discussing throughout these days. So much about the history. I would like now to show you some of my artistic research and build experiments. And to do so, I'd like to start by asking you to close your eyes. So please all close your eyes. And start by feeling your hands. Take one hand into the other. Let them touch each other. Now slowly lower your hands and let them rest on the top of your legs. What is the surface that you feel below your fingers? Which of your fingertips do you need to move to find out? Now slowly move your hands further back to the chair that you're sitting on. How does it feel? What is it made of? What kind of texture does it have? Is it hard? Is it warm or cold? How does it sound when you tap it? What is below you? What's the surface like beneath your feet? Is there a wall behind you or a door to your side? What do you hear now? If you imagine that the things that your body touches, those things that meet your hands, those that your feet feel, those things that your legs rest on, and those that your ears hear. If you imagine that their surfaces are merely a fragment of a world only you can perceive, what would that world be like? What can you see with your inner eye? Where are you now? So So please open your eyes. Yeah, thank you very much. I've done this with you because, of course, it's extremely difficult to describe, immersive, first-hand, embodied experiences. But I think in general, like all the work that you're going to see now really tries to find a way to combine our physical material bodies with the objects that we interact with and how this interaction triggers imaginary, dreamlike spaces, and these spaces again guide our body to move in a certain way. And the hypothesis of doing this is that when we interact with the virtual physically, so when we touch it, when we lick it, when we taste it, when we smell it, that we can actually reveal information about it that we would not otherwise be able to perceive. So the way of how I work, is basically that the research tools become the object of inquiry, meaning that I work with VR headsets and always object trackers, so HTC Vive object trackers connected to physical objects. In that case, for this installation, a wooden watering cane and a rake. And this means that basically, in that case, gardening in this like liminal space, that for example, the weight of the rake, but also the smell of the wood, like the texture of the wood, all inform the experience that I'm having in that moment. And this approach is grounded in a phenomenological perspective, which of course is inspired by my training as an architect. But I think, to all of us here, it's clear that spatial perception is inherently multisensory, and while virtual experiences are often or typically designed with an emphasis on audiovisual spaces, we all know that this is not, it's just like a very small fragment of what spatial perception means, and that of course our movement within that space, but also things like touch, smell, etc., are incredibly important. And here it is not only about like these big 5 Aristotelian senses, so touch, taste, smell, sound, and sight, but when we think about spatial environments or atmospheres, especially our sense for illumination, or our sense for time, chronoception, our sense for distances, etc., becomes very important in addition to that. So building these installations, so you see here some pictures of my earlier installations, basically allows us to explore spatial perception in its, of course not in all its modalities, but I think it allows us to increase the modalities that we can interact with when we not only focus on these audiovisual potentials. So you see here 3 installations that I built before starting my PhD, and I just wanted to show it to also see that, they all combine basically the immersant, the person going through the experience, that is like active, moving from one object to the other, then physical object that allow you to reposition your body, and then spatial virtual narratives that are triggered through these actions or interactions. And then within the framework of the PhD, I developed these 3 installations, which are entitled Performative Extended Reality Models, short XRM, and I would like to speak a bit about each of those today. So you have one on the left, which is looking into our role of bodies, in the middle into how we interact with objects in between these worlds, and the last one in how we can overlay or interact with different spatial setups. And I think, of course, within the context of this conference, so playing models, also why did I call these installations models, more particular performative extended reality models, was based due to 2 texts. So one is Models Are Real by Olafur Eliasson, which is a very beautiful little essay describing why models are not substitutes of reality or auxiliary means, but describe reality in themselves. And they're referring here to not this idea of having these kind of ad hoc or sketch models that we are often using in architecture, but actual performative models that also have an agency in themselves. And this is something that goes back to Thea Brejik and Lawrence Wallen, who wrote the book The Model as Performance, which sits between like theater theory and architecture theory. So based on these texts, I defined my work as these extended reality models that actually allow me, like throughout building, one surrounding the idea of bodies, one surrounding the idea of objects, and one surrounding the idea of spaces, to explore the different modalities of multisensory spatial perception. And so the three that I'll be speaking about have a more or less comparative setup, but in the end they're really, it is artistic research, so they're very open, explorative, also ongoing models that you'll be seeing here. So starting with infrathin magic, which is an extended reality ceremony. So here you have a person being guided by a ceremonial guide through like a 20-minute long, a bit like an induction ritual. And the title of this experience is based on a term by Marcel Duchamp called the inframens, which is like a kind of non-quantifiable notion, such as, for example, like the thickness of a shadow, or like the smell of a person that has just smoked a cigarette, and like when you kiss them, and how like the smell of that person and the cigarette smoke mixes, or the difference between two molds. So it always describes this kind of difference that we can all like feel or can relate to, but we could not describe, such as also like sitting on a chair that has just been sat on by another person. So I kind of set out to develop these infrathin instruments that allow us to feel like that space between the physical and the virtual that we cannot measure, or we don't have like any quantifiable maybe language yet to describe it, but we can actually relate to it upon experience. And this also goes back to an understanding of virtual technologies more as a kind of ritual practice, or how we work with it, how we use it, that we define this play area, that we open, we go put on the headset, go inside the space, and then of course our hands get this very big importance within these worlds. So it is also building on kind of magic rituals, but also alchemy, etc. And then all these installations, they always take the form of quite ceremonial practices, because it's one person that's being guided through interacting with these different objects, and then each of your physical interaction with them triggers then the continuation of the narrative. So for example, here on the right you see a person like picking up this vessel, which for example makes them move their vision inside that vessel. So you're holding your eyes between your hands, which of course has a strong effect on how you perceive your spatial environment, versus for example on the left you see somebody like sitting down and like descending into this 17-meter tower. So each of these spatial interaction has a very strong embodied I don't know, maybe kind of like the source is really like a feeling that you first sense with your physical body, and then you have this like virtual overlay that is then supporting this physical sensation. So you see here, basically upon like lying in this tube-like structure, then you start descending. So of course every person lies down in their own speed, has different head size, etc., etc. So a lot of the design work consists on providing a most intuitive movement and allowing for everybody to still be able to access these different interactions. And then each experience has a different world, and world building of course plays a huge role. It's all built like within a game engine. I mean, it's all built in Rhino, as most architects work in, but it's kind of compiled in a game engine. And I work a lot with quite reduced visual aesthetics to really focus on the haptics, but also, sometimes the smell, the movement. So a lot of my work is quite dark or like purely black and white. So it's more about the spatial configurations than the actual attempt to make photorealistic environments. And then the guidance, or kind of the performative aspects of these extended reality models, really comes through putting a guide or giving a guide a very prominent role. So all these experiences are supervised by actors or performers who are trained to help that person to be as immersed as possible and to guide their movement through these little roles as like guiding animals. So here, for example, the invigilator is a raven that is present throughout the experience and that allows you to kind of dip in and out of these different layers. So here you're also being fed, for example, as part of the ceremony. So you're being given artifacts that allow you to also drink and eat while being immersed. And in the end, like this kind of game between the invigilator and the immersant really creates an architecture that is a lot about being cared for, but also trusting the environment, and in the end, like empathizing with it, and through that increasing the immersion within. So this was the first installation I wanted to share with you. Now there's the second of the three I'm going to show today is Alison's Room, an extended reality archive. So this was exhibited in the Netherlands at the New Institute. And again, you see there's a person that is like reconfiguring their body, like moving in different ways throughout the space. In that case, not following a raven, but a little kitty cat, which was the cat by Alison Smithsons. So this installation allows you to go into the kind of archival, very private, very personal space of Alison Smithsons, the brutalist English architect. And the space does not exist as such anymore, so the house is not inhabited by the Smithsons anymore. The only source I had was this one color photography, and then the work actually consisted of how we can embody photography, like recreate or like research an image by being able to inhabit it and to enter its space in a more dynamic, interactive way. I'll show you a little trailer.
I'm glad you could make it today. I am Serafina, and I will guide you to the XR archive. As you requested, I have activated for you Alison Smithson's private working room with archive. File number GR7009, Cato Lodge. Depending on how you move through the space, where and for how long you stay, and which of the red elements you choose to touch, a different narrative will unfold, and different fragments of Alison and Peter's work life will be revealed to you. Ah, that's the little Garden of Paradise painting. Come, follow me through the chimney. I think we can walk inside of it. What are you doing? The sounds you make seem to be constructing the memory of the house of the future.
People get very good friends with the little cat. So I think the role of having a guide in these experiences, very underestimated, and I think it's very nice to treat it also more, performative and artistically. So of course these, one-to-one reconstruction require also like a big physical space. So having a studio, I think, was always something that surprised people purely working with VR headsets. Okay, why does it need such a big physical infrastructure? So I think in general, just like the way of how these things are being developed are actually very physical, very analog, like a lot of tracing paper, a lot of hand-drawn sketches go into it. And I think especially to understand like how all these different spaces are overlapping and how you can enter from one space into the other, requires a lot of architectural expertise and knowledge. So you can see here on the left, that basically in that space there are a lot of elements that are red that invite you to interact with them, and depending on where you position your head, where you position your hand, different parts of the narrative will unfold, and then the cat is basically a bit like a guiding element. So here, like you see somebody's playing a harp, and by playing the harp, the house of the future opens, and so there are all these kind of a bit like playful clues in the environment that allow people to go as intuitively as possible through them. And then, yeah, similar as with the other installation, you see that there's this person going through, being guided by somebody else, which is also a bit of a kind of, spectacle. Like, people, of course, watch, take pictures. It's quite entertaining to see once somebody's immersed, how little they care of being, laying down on the floor to taking a bath in the house of the future. And it was really, I think, this play between these two people that also inspired me to develop an installation that is really kind of stripped back of this like more spatial design environment or then the object design, and to work with or to kind of reduce these experiences to only having two bodies within that space. So this brings me to the third installation, which is called Rhetorical Bodies, an XR dance performance. And here the environment, it's really reduced to its minimum, and you have two bodies interacting with each other through sound. So this is the installation that I told you the little anecdote from the beginning. So basically here you have two people who go into the same environment simultaneously, and each of their body movement is translated into sound. So you have these inflatable wearables, and depending on how fast you move, so your velocity or also position of your limbs, is translated into different sound effects, which means that you not only hear your own body, but you also hear the other person's body, which is something that we're of course not used to. So we're used to seeing each other, but not, I cannot hear a person that is, behind or around me. I can maybe smell them. So the habituation of the senses, again, leads to a very interesting interaction with each other and also the virtual environment. And then for this installation here, I also work a lot with professional dancers. So I think in terms of doing transdisciplinary research, it has been very interesting to focus on these other senses and to also work with experts for movement, for example, or for sound. And you asked me yesterday if I'm also sharing some of my educational work. So this is just a little glimpse. I think a lot of these installations, of course, they are developed out of workshops, or they result in summer schools or courses. So I think especially a lot of this body work is very interesting to explore with bigger groups of people. So also to extend a bit my own personal or like limitations of my own body or knowledge of movement, and to actually collaborate with dance students, but also art students, to collaboratively explore what it means to have body parts tracked, or also to share your body. So here, this is a workshop I did in Berlin at the UDK, where a whole body was distributed among a group of students, meaning that one person was the leg, one person was the arm, one person was the head. So they developed a way of moving together to have this awareness of each other. So this is a form of like a collective embodied synthesizer, where also at some point there's no headset needed anymore to have this very immersive sensation or installation. And then to finish, I would like to share a little bit also the insight. So one thing, of course, is like the design process, developing these installations, exhibiting them. But then a huge part also of the PhD research was in gathering people's reflections, analysis, comments. So all these installations were not only supervised, but also followed up with like a short introspection where people were invited to write about where they have gone or what they've experienced. And I'd like to read out some quotes that people have written that also I think really allowed me to position like this extended reality model as a tool that can bridge this gap between different disciplines, but I think also really lends itself to research not only in architecture, but also going into the field of scenography, performance, design, and also in this UI, UX, and gaming field. So one comment was, for example, that a person felt a deep sense of connection and visible pact between all involved, or a symbiotic relationship where my action influenced the virtual space, the opening of a space within or below my mind, or two distinct kind of spaces, although they kind of interweave, one that opened my mind and one that opened my body, and lastly, a space that I did not know exists but never want to miss. So all these comments there were like hundreds of comments, and like reading through them, helped me to understand this interplay that happens between our bodies, the objects we interact with, and the spaces in which we are immersed in. And I was looking quite long for a theoretical framework that, firstly challenges Cartesian dualism, that stops, secondly, I think very importantly also, to isolate mental processes such as thinking, remembering, or theorizing, and confining them to the brain alone. And that lastly puts first-hand experience in its, or at its center, integrating human and non-human actors equally. So in the case of these extended reality models, that means from the weight of the headset to maybe the smell of the wooden rake, to the way that the invigilator, which becomes a raven, moves around the person being immersed, and how they wiggle their hand, etc., etc. So I began working with the 4E cognition framework, following their thesis that cognition is not only embodied, which means, that of course, our body, or our embodied interactions are at its core, but that it's also enacted. So how we use our body and how we interact with our body, with other things, is very important, that it is also embedded. So of course, embedded within social, cultural context, and even extended. So that's very special about this 4E cognition framework, that they also include any other, for example, technical devices in our cognitive capacities, but not only devices or auxiliary means, but it could also be people. So for example, that I could outsource part of my mental capacities in, I don't know, my partner knowing more phone numbers than I, or I don't know, shopping lists, etc. So this idea that, we have this 4E cognition framework became very crucial, and according to 4E cognition, our brain is constantly constructing internally generated models, or often also called simulations, of the world in which we find ourselves, driven by the concept of the predictive brain, which is a concept that was coined by a neuroscientist called Strunden. So I think this is really nice in the context of our playing models conference to also speak about it. So this notion of the predictive brain suggests that our brain uses mental models to simulate scenarios about the environment, generating prediction based on past experiences. So what happens is that these scenarios are compared with the actual sensory impression perceived through the interplay of all our senses. And the brain then tries to achieve a synthesis of the mental model and the sensory data, which is reflected in the immediate perception. So that what we feel or we perceive. And this means that stimuli that are considered improbable by the mental model are suppressed in perception. So in other words, we see what we're expecting to see, and what we're seeing is a mental construction per se. So what we perceive as reality is always a calibrated version of what we anticipate, expect, or potentially desire to perceive, meaning that the small amount of sensory data we consciously process is a result of what has not met the expectation of the internal model, a so-called prediction error. And this means that our world, or our perception of the world, is a dynamic model that constantly adjusts itself at various levels and will always remain a prediction. And I think this really calls into question the very nature of reality and suggests that our everyday experience, even outside of VR, MR, XR, whatever, can be seen as a form of simulation. And I would like to read this quote by neuroscientist Chris Firth, who explains, "Our brain builds models of the world and continuously modifies these models on the basis of the signals that reach our senses. So what we actually perceive are our brain's models of the world. You could say that our perception of fantasies that coincide with reality," reminding us of the essay that I presented in the beginning by Olafur Eliassen, which stated that models are, in fact, real. So, while 4E cognition explains this calibration of our mental models of the world, the extended reality models that are presented to you flip this dynamic and create dynamic models that use speculative world-building techniques to experiment how these can actually recalibrate the mind. So this can be compared, I think we have it a lot, of course, in practices of meditation. There's these ideas about lucid dreaming, or often also, people refer to the use of psychedelics. So instead of exploring the predictive brain from within the mind, the extended reality model takes a reverse approach and starts by altering the world and then immersing often myself, but also others in terms of exhibitions in it, and allowing us to intuitively learn how to interact with this reality anew. So this is very similar to what little kids do, I don't know, babies, children, also in the way of how they learn this reality. And then a lot of these excitation actually consist of purposefully or consciously designing what Friston calls prediction errors. So these are like situations, what I mentioned before is like dehabituation of our senses, means that we create situations where our expectations does not match reality, such as like the example of holding our eyes in between our hands. Or like, also like in the example of Shar Davis, for example, by moving distances, by breathing in or out, or like moving longer distances just by moving our head in small ways. So this reveals like, deeper seated knowledge about our understanding of spatial relations. And I think like to finish, I would just like to ask what happens if the environment we are immersed in is unstable. So how does it affect our design thinking, our creativity and dreaming if we're continuously immersed in models that challenge aspects of gravity, of balance, of time, of depth, light situations, etc., that we usually perceive as stable because, we always lived here, here on Earth, and evolved our spatial understanding under the physical laws and conditions of earthly environments. So by playing with these extended reality models, I unveiled this, I believe, much underestimated spatio-temporal dimension of cognition, which I called enveloped cognition. And this goes back also to one of the many conversations I had with Shar Davis, the female VR pioneers, who observed, and this is a quote of hers, when I think of immersion, and when I thought of it all those years ago, I was really imagining it as an enveloping spaces that you could feel close up against the skin. So enveloped cognition to me, it is the cocoon, the caress, the protective reality of a spatio-temporal dimension that bolsters and nurtures mental capabilities that cannot be quantified, such as creativity, concentration, or contemplation. It is the deep conscious feeling of presence, of being in the flow, of being part of something that exists simultaneously in the here and out there. So to explore this notion of enveloped cognition in depth, I'm not going to go into these, but these are like basically the upcoming research project that I'll be developing at ETH Zurich in the coming years. So one of them is called Mirror Worlds, which goes back to your comment before, looking into how we can prompt space, so kind of going beyond prompting text and images to actually prompt space through proximity and moving around each other, so combining AI with these extended reality models. And I think at its core, this idea of the extended reality models really looks into how we can recreate an architecture of real-time, full-size, in-person, first-hand, and on-site. Thank you very much for your attention. And of course, I'm standing here by myself, but all of this work has been developed in collaboration and with the help of many others, and also, of course, supervised and mentored. And so I just would like to show all the credits, also of the images. And one more time, thank you also to having organized this, and to all of the other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you for a fantastic presentation. Let's see if there are any questions from the audience first. I'll maybe ask a kind of question first and then see. One of the things that kind of occurred to me, I don't know, maybe you're familiar with the book, Body Ritual of the Nasarima. This is by Harold Miner. He's sort of writing about America. Basically, it's America inverted, right? And then all the kind of like rituals of the everyday that from a sort of anthropological point of view, that seem very strange to an outsider, right? Like, let's say they're alien anthropologists who landed on Earth. And so he sort of describes, you know, dentists as like holy men, right? And these sort of everyday rituals. And a lot of the kind of work they just showed seem like they're kind of fascinated with like movements and rituals of some kind, but also through this like, you know, kind of displacement, right? Our sensory displacement into a sort of fantastical world also kind of somehow reconnects us back into reality, right? It's sort of heightening our sense of reality. So I'm really kind of interested in this aspect of the work, like the sort of how you're connecting the everyday, right, and the environments, you know, just as kind of the access to touch things and kind of feel things through these experiences that you're designing or creating.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think the everyday and how it connects to these imaginary, surreal kind of dreamy environments, I think is very much at the core of the research or the explorations. And I think it's also due to the fact that I believe we're constantly in a form of extended or mediated reality. So if I mean, we are all in our thoughts. I have no idea what you've been thinking when I was presenting. So of course, in that moment where I guide you through this meditation, I basically just I invite you to be closer presence and in relation with like the physical objects and the environment that surrounds that. But in the end, I think we are always in this like paradox state of being in here and somewhere out there, or it's kind of in our body and somewhere out at the same time. So I think these models, they just make it tangible. So I think they just allow you to become present or aware of that sensation and also of this paradox sensation. And I think the more every day, the more common like that interaction can be, the more enjoyable it is for the immersion. So, for example, to sit on a chair in an extended reality model that has the weight, and to lift that up and to actually sit on it, and then to understand that the chair might speak or might behave in a way, is much more exciting than to be like in a, I don't know, crazy space ship. So I think it is also a bit of a, I mean, all these works are a bit like a love letter also to our everyday reality. And I feel of it a lot like, I mean, in the way how like little children learn about the environment, like at the age of like, I don't know, 1, 2, where they start taking everything into their mouth and like into their hands. And I think it's very comparable to, I think, if we want to design things that are native to the virtual or to that digital space, to explore it almost as toddlers or as like, little babies that start exploring that space and start taking it into, our mouth and into our hands and just see how it reacts. So to me, it doesn't need to be anything, I think, I mean, like to me, like the wonder, the magic, I mean, they are all there. Like that's not what we need these devices for, but it's more to almost, to heighten or de-habituate our senses and to remind us of it.
I'm also really curious about, let's say, for example, the archive project where there's a guide, right? Mm-hmm. And, the interaction of the people who are in the model versus the people outside watching. Of course, with headsets, sometimes it's helpful for us to kind of have the monitor or the feed to kind of see what the person is doing. But I'm also just kind of wondering about like what's the perception and what's the interaction with the audience or the people surrounding them.
I think it's quite good. I mean, I would say it's a bit like theater, and I think people also really like to do these installations because it's quite like a social thing. I think like one thing is the conversation you have with the invigilator before you go in, but then also this kind of introspection that you're invited to afterwards. But then also, that it has this very playful component of, I don't know, like being watched or watching the others. Or I also think people are in very strong disbelief about, they say, for example, like, I'll go in, but I won't lie on the ground. I won't sit there. I don't walk so far, so I will behave a bit differently. And of course they don't. Like they all behave surprisingly similar, I think, and but don't believe it afterwards, or like I think this is quite interesting that I think everybody plays a role in it, but like the role is continuously changing. So I think that was something that I was quite surprised to find out, like when observing these exhibition setups, that people kind of entered a role without knowing. So I think it's much more theatrical or performative than you would expect it to be, and also to what extent, as architectural designers, we can design movement and behavior. I think we all used to speak about, one dreams a bit about it. I personally, I've never built a physical building, and I'm always surprised by the amount of belief that goes into virtual architecture. Nobody ever stepped on through over a balcony stand or goes through a wall, or that kind of I think everybody can architecture, everybody can behave in an architectural environment, no matter how surreal it is. I think we're all so used to it, and I think it becomes very interesting. I think not so much in the observation of just the people's behavior, but then in these introspection or reflection when they describe where they have been to, because that's then where the differences lie. So they may all sit on the ground or lie somewhere, even if they said they wouldn't, but then they would see things that I have not placed there. I don't know, they see different colors, they see different shapes, they relate it to, in the end. And I think that's where this idea of the model comes in, because they're related to their own memories, they're related to their own knowledge, they're related to their own cultural understanding of maybe a similar element, or and I think that's where it becomes really interesting, not so much in the physical behavior, but in the kind of almost mental space and connected to it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for that. I wasn't expecting that. That was really interesting. So thank you. It was super cool. I had a couple of questions. Maybe one in relation to the existing environment while people are experiencing it, and kind of how you maybe deal or mitigate with potential ruptures in the immersiveness of the experience. And then and sort of what would be maybe the dream venue space for that type of thing, right? Because I noticed maybe in one of the experiences, I think it was the one with the cat, it's quite well lit all around. And granted, of course, while you're in VR, you're probably not seeing that. I suspect there might be secondary noise creeping through, things like that, right? So I'm just and even things like temperature. So I was just wondering what would be the sort of dream scenario of this fully calibrated, maybe sensory deprivation chamber or something. And then the other question was kind of maybe more to do with, it felt like there's a kind of hypnotic quality in the work, and maybe feelings of even time dilation that takes place. And I was just wondering maybe if, I guess, I don't know, I've never really gone to a yoga retreat, but maybe it's something kind of, not in the sense, let me finish first. So I'm not saying what you're doing is making a really cool hypnotic yoga retreat, but I suspect there's maybe a period of onboarding to kind of get to calibrate you into a sort of mental state to be willing to receive whatever is coming next, And I was just kind of wondering, maybe through your own process, what have you found to work quite well? What have you sort of found kind of disrupts the experience? Things like that.
Yeah. Thank you very much for both the questions. I think to the first one, how the physical and the virtual space relate, and how I deal with potential ruptures. I think I embrace them. I love them. I think that the more they happen, the better. And like I think also the more they happen also for visitors in unexpected ways. I think if they're, I think like within these setups where you have a lot of physical objects and they happen in public, also physical setups, and people often come, I don't know, with their partner or their kids to experience these installations. They are also being invited to contribute. So for example, in the first installation in Strunden Magic, where you had this window that you would be fed through, like the invigilators would also ask the people that they knew around. So I don't know, a parent to see their child through that window while eating in that world after you have, gone down like a 70-meter tower and like are speaking with a raven is much more exciting than if they do it with me or like with the invigilator they've never seen before. So I think that ties also a bit back to your first question about the everyday. I think the more common it can be, the more exciting it becomes in that world. So I think anything from a door that is being opened and like a slight wind that you feel like while you go down to suddenly feeling something soft below your feet, or I think, I really try to embrace them and also to, throughout the design process, to build upon these a bit, kind of glitches between the physical and the virtual that happens, and then to increase them. I think also this experience, for example, of holding your eyes between your hands, like what happens is that the space starts turning around you because we've never experienced having moved our head independently of our kind of sense of balance or gravitation. So these are all experiences that happened to me accidentally. I think like also, the moment you start combining some technical devices, there's a lot of stuff that happens, and I think the more that can become part of the also outcome of the work, I think the more exciting it gets. And I think it's a very intuitive process. But again, I think like similar with like how surprising it has been to me how much people believe in these architectural elements. I think it's always also surprising to me again on how much we can trust these experiences to be much more universal than we think they might be. So I think there's something about like four-dimensional spatial environments that like acts on like an intuitive level, maybe different than like just a drawing or a text. That I've also experienced a lot, like working with students who have never worked with these technologies before, to actually be able to create very compelling, convincing setups without being architects or so this for this first, and like the kind of hypnotic quality of the experience, and which role this onboarding plays. I think it plays a huge role. I mean, to me personally, I think it's the most important. I think like that's also why I hire actors or performers to guide the work. I think like the amount that you're able to trust these devices, or like the way how you enter in that world, the stronger you will be immersed, the more present you will feel. So I think it's very comparable to a guided psychedelic trip or like a guided meditation or anything. Like, of course, this idea of a guru or like a shamanic guide or whatever it is, I think there's a reason why if we are to undergo a transformative experience, and of course as an artist it is my aim to create transformative experiences, that it helps a lot to have a person on site that is to be trusted, but that also helps in case something is maybe scary or unwanted, or in that moment, and also afterwards to then reflect upon it. And so I think that presence is very important. And then I think the question, it's a bit like this question we probably have all asked ourselves, like, what is the actual value of a VR experience or XR experience? Like, I mean, why, like if these things are exhibited in a museum, like, why do you decide to do it? Or, I mean, probably none of us, apart from these new Ray-Ban glasses, owns a VR headset, or, I mean, I never in my free time do these experiences. So I think, like, of course, I ask myself so much, okay, if I offer an experience and if I invite people into that, like, how do I actually create a valuable, transformative, memorable experience to them? And I think the idea of, a bit like, I don't know, the ancient Greeks and Egyptians, they had these dream induction temples, or how we do hypnotic, I don't know, setups or environments. I think, to me, this is a bit like the way on how we can create value throughout these experiences that goes beyond, I don't know, going into the park or going to a dance session, which most of us, I think, prefer than putting our head inside of a headset. So I think, at least like in my work, it has always gone into that direction in order to create something that is not trying to replicate or represent anything that we could much better have in physical material lives, but to actually create something that is, that we have not experienced as such before. And I think the way into the unconscious, or like this land of dreaming, at least to me, that's the way.
Okay. Maybe to keep things relatively on track, we should move on, but we can continue our conversations. But thank you.
Thank you.